Welcome to What Does That Mean with the Milwaukee Journal Sentinel. From common terms to coverages, coach speak to historical references, we break down everything you need to know to better understand the sports you love. The salary cap, an elusive term that defines this time of year on the NFL calendar. But what is the salary cap? In short, no one really knows. The rules are always changing, the numbers are inflating, and it's nearly impossible to understand all of the ins and outs because it's all just monopoly money anyways. But I digress. Okay, so the cap refers to the maximum amount of money each of the 32 NFL teams are allowed to spend on their roster each season. This number is agreed upon by the league office and league players and is the same for each team, making for an equal playing field, in theory. The number is set year to year and determined by league revenue. This coming fiscal year, the salary cap for each team is a whopping $224.8 million. But it's not as simple as spreading that amount of money over player salaries for one season. Buckle up, here's where things get hairy. If a team spends less than the salary cap allotment in a given year, the remainder can roll over to the next year. This is why some teams have more to spend than other teams in a given year. A popular strategy is to save money until teams are ready to build a quick championship contending roster. Conversely, some teams kick the can down the road, so to speak. They borrow against a future year's salaries by backloading a player's contract, planning to pay him more in the latter half of his contract in anticipation of the salary cap rising in coming years. As an example, the Green Bay Packers in 2023 are scheduled to spend $250.9 million in player contracts according to Spottrack.com. But general manager Brian Gutekunst also has to deal with $555,000 in dead cap. We'll explain this in just a minute, bringing the total to just over $251 million in promised contracts. But the salary cap, if you remember, is $224.8 million. The Packers worked some magic last season and found just enough coins in the couch cushions to roll over $1.6 million, meaning in total, the club has $226.4 million with which to work. However, this accounts for the entire offseason roster. The important number to remember here is $243.9 million, which is owed to the top 51 players under contract, i.e. the players on the active roster. Other players, like practice squad signees, are signed on a season basis and theoretically don't really count against the cap. This all means the Packers are currently over the cap by, subtract that from that, borrow from there, carry the one. I was told there would be no math. $17.5 million. They must eliminate that difference and be under the $224 million cap by the beginning of the new league year, March 15th. Beware the Ides of March. So how do teams make it work? As an example, let's say the Packers signed John Doe to a 4-year, $48 million contract with an additional 2 void years, which means the Packers are planning to spread that $48 million in the ledger over the space of 6 years, even if John Doe signs with a new team after his 4-year contract is complete. John Doe was paid around $5 and $6 million each of his first 2 years, respectively. Now, in year 3, Doe is scheduled to make just over $20 million. But this is the NFL salary cap where everything's made up and the money doesn't matter. That $20 million is not actually being paid to the player. It's just counting against the Packers salary cap. All of these numbers I've given you so far are just how the poor accountant at 1265 Lombardi has to explain the cost in the books. Instead, in the first year of his contract, Doe was actually given a signing bonus of $13 million. Combined with his base salary, that means he walked away that day $14 million richer. A signing bonus still counts against the Packers salary cap, but unlike a base salary, it can be spread out over a maximum of 5 years. In situations when teams are up against the cap, they might restructure a player's deal, converting a base salary into a signing bonus, give them a little bit more breathing room that particular year. This leads us to a dead cap hit. A team is still responsible for what they promised to pay in any given contract, even if that player is no longer on the roster via trade, release, or retirement. The dead cap takes into account what a player is still owed on the books minus what he's actually already been paid. June 1st is an important date on the NFL salary cap calendar because if a player is released, traded, or retires before that date, his dead cap hit must be moved into the current league year. If he's removed from the roster after June 1st, only his bonuses count against the current year, and his entire dead cap hit, with salaries and all, could be spread over 2 years. So let's go back to our example, John Doe. He is owed over $20 million in his 3rd season, but he was already paid more than the salary cap accounted for in his first 2 years. On the books, it was around $5 million each year. In actuality, it was over $14 million. If he is released or traded before June 1st, the team can now show they've already paid him that amount. so their dead cap hit would be just under $10 million. Subtract that from the $20 million the ledger states he's owed, and that would save the team around $10.4 million in salary cap space this season. Teams in this scenario who want to hold on to their star players will often restructure a contract, release older players who are responsible for a larger percentage against the cap, or not re-sign free agents, electing to bring in cheaper, younger options instead. This is known as manipulating the cap. And if you're thinking you still don't get it after all that, don't worry, no one else does either.